happy to be here and honored to represent the Pride Center. We're actually the oldest continuously operating LGBT community center in the country. And we have a 27-year-old youth program that includes work in schools. And I'm glad to follow up with information from the survey distributed by GLSEN and information on the Dignity for All Students Act, because both of those have really informed what we consider to be best practices for schools to support all students. We work with school districts on a variety of issues, either on a preventative level to approach proactively addressing bullying, or in response after an incident has happened. So I have some recommendations that I wanted to share based on what we have guided other schools to do. We know that bullying and harassment is a major problem in schools today, and it doesn't just affect people who are the targets of bullying. It also really affects the perpetrators and the bystanders. So it's important for schools to take steps to prevent and to respond to bullying that specifically address and include the needs of LGBT youth, because we know that a lot of the targets of bullying today are based on gender nonconforming behavior. So this includes boys who are more effeminate or girls who are more masculine, and it also targets sexual orientation. And I would say that this is real or perceived, because sometimes the problem extends beyond LGBT youth and includes students who are just perceived to be LGBT. So the first recommendation that we give for school administration is to create an expectation of inclusion and respect. This really does start from the top down. So what is your school administration doing to shape the environment? Because whether or not the administration is actively engaged in creating a safe environment for students is shaping the environment. Schools are not just safe and welcoming communities accidentally. It really does take a certain level of work to achieve that. So does your school have a zero tolerance policy on bias language? Do teachers know about the policy? Are they empowered to enforce it? What policies are in place to support transgender youth specifically? If you have a young person who identifies as male but was born female, what bathroom should they use at your school? And are there policies in place already to deal with that preemptively, or are you going to address that once the situation arises? We encourage schools to update policies really to protect students from harassment and make sure that the policies reflect the unique needs of your LGBT students. So this includes a zero tolerance policy for bias language, discussing reporting procedures so the teacher can use and enforce the school policies, and include the policies in the school's code of conduct so that students are aware of these expectations and the consequences for noncompliance. We know that in times when resources are really scarce, it can be challenging to think about creating more work if these policies and these trainings aren't implemented, but we really consider it to be a worthwhile investment. We know that when schools do not put the work in that it takes to create a welcoming environment, students feel unsafe, disengaged, isolated, and are at greater risk for negative outcomes. So a climate of inclusion really starts with the administration, but requires everyone's participation. We know that nobody is born knowing exactly how to support LGBT youth, that it does take training and practice. So we encourage continuous training be available for all school faculty. The adults in the school really have a powerful ability to shape the climate of the school and need to be continuously educated on the issues facing LGBT youth. And this includes the best ways to work with LGBT youth and have the chance to practice intervening. So with this, we say that it is important for all faculty and staff to be trained, because bullying and harassment happens everywhere from the classroom to the school bus. And it's everyone's job to be delivering the message that all students deserve to safely be who they are in school so that they can have the same experience that other students have. And it's really just not enough at this point for school faculty and staff to be well-intended or to be a passive ally silently supporting LGBT youth. It's really important that LGBT youth know who their allies are, and they won't know if you're not speaking up. Let's see. If you could go to the next slide. Oh, yeah, sorry, in the school, go back one, I guess. These are some recommendations that we have for setting a tone both for administrators and educators to commit to creating that tone of respect for environment. In the school, we encourage that representation of all types of diversity are reflected. So this includes in hallways, in classrooms, in curriculum, on brochures, posters, at events. We know that students are really more engaged and will be more invested in their education in their school when their experiences are reflected in the school setting. It's important that resources are available in and outside of school. There are organizations all over the country doing work to support LGBT youth, and it's important that youth have access to those. We really encourage the formation and the success of gay-straight alliances. As Andy had indicated, the presence of a gay-straight alliance really can improve academic outcomes and other indicators of success for students. So if your school doesn't have one, GLSEN is a great resource for identifying ways to make that happen. Or if your school has a GSA, make sure that it's flourishing, because this is a great resource for students. And then bring in speakers to talk about their experiences as an LGBT person. A lot of schools have diversity appreciation days, so use these to showcase and include gender and sexual diversity in addition to other types of diversity. And then be inclusive of other of LGBT-headed households, because we're not just talking about LGBT students here. There are also students who are raised by LGBT people, or folks who have LGBT people who are important to them in their lives. So make sure that the policies and the documents that are sent home really reflect the diversity of experiences within the community. And moving on to the last slide, we have some more specific suggestions that offer teachers some ideas to integrate this into the classroom. So we really encourage teachers to be upfront about the language and the behavior that is unacceptable to use. We work with many teachers who practice this, and they apply it in the beginning of the school year, and they indicate that initially youth may need some reminding, but soon it becomes a non-issue, and it actually ends up saving valuable classroom time that would have been used to reprimand students. And it's a really powerful message for LGBT youth to hear, and it allows them to easily identify you as a supportive teacher, which is really important. We encourage teachers to model the behavior that they wish to see in their students. Some students may not know what it means to be an ally to LGBT students, and the actions that they see of their teacher can offer them guidance that will not only support them in helping out their peers and in being an ally to their peers, but it's also going to improve their social emotional development, which is important as well. We encourage people to really promptly intervene when youth behave disrespectfully toward their peers based upon sexual orientation, gender identity, or other differences that you see. Many teachers are already accustomed to intervening when youth are targeted based on race or ethnicity, ability, other protected classes. So we encourage them to get in the habit of responding when biased language is used or hurtful stereotypes are made about LGBT people. And this doesn't have to be anything very complex. It can be quick and simple, like that word is hurtful and not welcome in this school, or homework can't be gay, and I know you have a big vocabulary, so what word might make more sense to use here? Often what I hear from teachers is that they really just don't know what to say, and there's no one perfect way to respond as long as you're speaking up, as long as you're saying something. The important thing is that students hear that biased language and harassing behavior is not acceptable. And we really encourage people to focus on the use of the derogatory words rather than the words themselves. It's important to let youth know that talking about LGBT identity and relationships is appropriate, but that using LGBT identity as an insult is what is unacceptable. So, for example, gay is not a bad word. We can unintentionally send messages that being LGBT is a taboo topic that shouldn't be discussed in schools, when in reality it should be taught as a healthy and normal identity. And the last piece here we have is to integrate LGBT experiences in your curriculum and make sure that images reflect diversity. So if a person came into your classroom and was a visitor, would they see books or posters or stickers or anything that indicated that diversity is valued and encouraged in this setting? Do you have resources on LGBT topics available? And do students or their parents or guardians or other staff know that you have them? what we see is that many LGBT youth grow up feeling pretty isolated because they don't hear many positive things or anything about LGBT people. And it's really important for their identity development to have positive representations of people like them. So include LGBT history or political advancement in government class, or LGBT books in English. What we see is that too frequently LGBT youth only hear stories about LGBT people when suicide rates increase or HIV rates go up. And there are a lot of really good things going on in the community as well, so make sure that they're aware of that. And I think that Meg has a couple more suggestions to lead us into the next discussion on why it's really important to create environments of inclusion like I've described.